RadioWeek 2026.
Smart ideas for radio and audio operators.
Hello. You have been hacked by the mighty force. I will take over this webcast and play German folk songs for the next hour. You can only avoid
What the hell has
this
happened? This is
by
scary.
paying me 100 million euros. Ha ha ha.
I think we've lost control. Oh my, we're back. Thank heaven. Well, don't worry. That was, of course, staged, and we did a very poor job, I think, of helping to make it seem real. But several broadcasters in the last year, that moment was painfully real. Welcome, everyone, wherever you are in the world, engineers, managers, operators, on-air talent. Thank you for joining us. This is all about how do you keep your station alive. There are so many malign actors in the world, and they're doing this at stations everywhere. We've got examples which we may not be able to talk about today because we haven't got their permission, but it's happened in the US, it's happened across Europe, Africa, Australia. These things are happening to radio stations. So a simple question: what would 30 seconds of dead air cost your station? Now imagine 30 minutes or even 30 hours. Picture this. It's Monday morning drive time. Your morning show talent opens the mic, and instead of your show, listeners hear a deepfaked CEO announcing that the station has been shut down because you've run out of money. Or worse, nothing at all. Or a voice like the one you saw at the beginning of our webinar, nothing at all, because your entire playout system is locked behind a ransom demand. It's not just an engineering problem. It isn't just a management problem. It's a business continuity problem. And today, we're going to tackle it together. For those of you who've just joined, we're keen to hear your stories. Please say hi by clicking on the comments section on the right of your screen where you're watching. Let us know where you're watching this webinar from. It's great to have you join us. Thank you. And hopefully you're going to learn a lot, but we'd also, very importantly, like to hear some of your stories. If you've had this happen to you, tell us about it. We want to know what exactly the problem was. Use the comment section to do that. The session is brought to you by CGI. Thank you so much. And we're delighted to have our version of the Avengers here to help you fight this threat and defend your station. They're, of course, a tropical Avenger in Michael Thielen, wearing a fancy shirt as if he's in Hawaii or some brilliant tropical island near southern Africa. But he's not. He's in cold Germany. Michael, would you introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Sebastian.
Yes, hello everyone from cold Germany. I'm sitting in the office and outside it's raining and just 3 degrees warm or cold, however you see it. My name is Michael Thielen from CGI, and I'm responsible for whatever we do in the media industry. You might have heard of CGI because we do operate our radio production and playout software, which is called DIRA. We also have a newsroom system, which is called Open Media. But we also, as we are a big company with more than 100,000 people around the world, we also deal with other industry sectors. And of course, we do with malicious stuff and bad people. And I've brought one of our guys who's really, really extremely good in fighting against bad people. It's Sebastian.
Sebastian, go ahead.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Omar. Thanks for having us here. Yeah, as you said, my name is Sebastian Jansen. I've been with CGI for almost 10 years. I'm also located in cold Germany, and it's raining outside when I look outside my window. As already mentioned, I'm passionate about cybersecurity. I've been doing various stuff in that area. So starting with a lot of governance, but also being head of security operations for high-profile conferences all around the globe. And this is always involved with live broadcasting. And so I'm happy to be here and talk a little bit about that experience.
Well, Sebastian, let's go with you then. So if you were to think about the top 3 or 4 threats that radio is facing in 2026, can you tell us about it in a way that makes sense to our audience, made up of managers, engineers? It's not just technical people, but quite a lot of them are technical. What would you say the top 3 threats are that they're facing.
Yeah, I guess looking at the threats that occurred in the recent years, one is really standing out, and that would be voice hacking using real-time AI, right? So we've seen generative AI becoming more and more powerful over the last years. And when I look back, and maybe you also remember that, about 8 years ago, Google showcased their voice assistant on the phone, which made an appointment with, I guess, the restaurant or something like that. And what happened was that the voice AI on the phone was really indistinguishable from a real human. So it had some pauses during talking, it put in some filler words and stuff like that. And remember, that was 8 years ago. So AI has really come a long way since then. And it has been increasingly powerful. And since we have a huge database, a huge training database online available, especially when we talk about, for example, politicians or actors or stuff like that, you can train the AI on that data and then have them perfectly impersonating their voices. So what I'm saying is you cannot really be sure that the voice you're hearing online or on the radio is really belonging to that person if you cannot see her or if you're not with them in person. And I guess that is not only about hacking microphones and stuff like that, which is really hard to do, but it's hacking your editorial trust that your listeners put into you as a radio broadcaster, right?
Just before you get on to 2 and 3, I want to remind those of you that have joined us again, thank you. And I see from South Africa, I see from Los Angeles, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Thank you all of you that have come on board to watch this session and learn from our experts. Please feel free to ask questions as and when they occur, as and when Sebastian or Michael are talking about particular issues or incidents. If you've got specific things you want to know more about, there's the comment section. Pop it in there. Write down your question. We'll pop it on screen, and Sebastian or Michael will take care of it. Go ahead, Sebastian, with the second and third threats that you were talking about. So we've got the hacking, which is the first one.
Exactly. And maybe just to add a little bit here on how can you maybe deal with that? Because that's not only a problem that you can fix with a technical solution, right? I mean, you're facing a technical threat, but basically this is something that you need to address. Otherwise, you need to make sure you're talking to the person you want to talk to. So maybe you have to call them instead of having them call you, for example, stuff like that. Or you need to train your staff, your hosts, to somehow look out for unusual answers, stuff like that. And so there's a lot of stuff really going on in cybersecurity, which is not from a technical viewpoint, but it's more from an organizational viewpoint, or from awareness, from an awareness side. And this, I mentioned this because this will really be a red line, we can follow through all this hour that we have to talk about that.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, sure. So the second big threat that we're facing is the issue that when we talk about radio broadcast, we're talking about real-time incident response, so to say, right? So just imagine normally you're operating a data center and somebody attacks you in one way or the other. And normally when you have a security provider, they have some service level agreements that say, okay, you need to respond within 15 minutes so that we can be sure that everything is covered and there's someone sitting in front of the screen and really protecting us. But if you apply this time to a radio broadcast, right, you have 15 minutes. I mean, what do you do in between? The station is going offline, something like that. And that's horrible if you're talking about real-time broadcasting. And so this is something that you also need to address. You need to be ready to react in a very short amount of time. And you need to have plans. You need to have backup solutions. Maybe you can switch over to another station which takes over the broadcast while you deal with whatever hits you. Or maybe you have something like a cloud-hosted backup service, a backup stream, something that could go online and cover for the time that you need to deal with that. And I mean, depending on how hard you've been hit, that may not only be like 5 to 10 minutes, that may take hours, days, or weeks, right? So there's something really something where you need to be prepared in order to address those real-time incidents as they occur, since you have a direct impact on your listenership. Yeah.
And the third threat. So we start with
Yes.
voice hacking. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. The third threat, that is something you're not alone with in radio broadcasting, because that is supply chain security. It's becoming increasingly painful to manage this. Maybe looking back a few years, you may have heard of the SolarWinds attack, where a malicious actor was capable of distributing malicious code through a web portal. So the supplier SolarWinds, they rolled out updates for the software, but what they didn't know was that there was malicious code within these updates, and this led to thousands of organizations being hit by the attack, going offline. The entire Microsoft stack was offline for, I think it was 2 to 3 days, something like that. So that was really huge. And this is something that, of course, could also hit radio broadcasting as well. Today, broadcasting is heavily depending on suppliers, be it for the technical equipment, but also for some traffic hosting, for cloud hosting, and so on. And there, if one of those suppliers gets hit, you don't immediately recognize it, right? So it could occur at any time the attacker wants, and then it could take your station offline, something like that. So you also need to address this somehow. So maybe do not automatically roll out your updates, do some testing, do some offline testing. Limit how contractors can access your infrastructure, your systems. Do not give them an open account to do whatever they want. Do some vulnerability monitoring for them, or require them to bring some certifications. So here, make sure that you're certified from a security perspective with ISO 27001 or something, so that we can trust that you are using dependable processes internally when preparing our solution. So this is really something that's big today.
Thank you, Sebastian. So just a reminder for those of you that are watching, you're welcome to send your questions as and when you want. Great to see people that I remember from working in South Africa. William Scott, hi, good to have you joining us. And there's a whole host of others. Terry from Los Angeles, Gareth from Durban in South Africa. That shirt probably makes sense where you are, that Michael's wearing, Gareth, but certainly not for him in Germany in 2 degrees weather. But so let's thank you for taking us through those 3 threats. We're going to do some myth busting a little later, but if you had to think about the most common technical mistake the stations make that puts them at risk, can you explain that in a way that non-technical people can also understand? What's the most common technical mistake?
I would say the most common mistake is that the people are not treating their broadcasting infrastructure as special, or they're treating it as special. So, everybody knows they have to protect their IT infrastructure. All right, you have to have some antivirus, some endpoint protection, a firewall, stuff like that. And when it comes to things like mixers or stuff, they really think, that's a piece of hardware that cannot be hacked. But this is not true anymore, right? So today, every special hardware is running an operating system. So maybe some odd version of Windows, or maybe even some old version of embedded Windows, maybe Linux, or there are even solutions that run Android, the mobile phone OS, right? And all of those operating systems and the applications running there, they can be hacked exactly like your normal laptop can, right? So there are vulnerabilities in the code. Somebody skipped some authentication or something like that. And that means with the ever converging IT and OT system, so the normal office IT and your operational technology being connected through your network, being connected to the internet, they become targets, and you need to take appropriate measures to secure them as you would do for your IT infrastructure. And if you're not aware of that, and if you're just saying, that is my mixer, it's sitting there, I don't care about the software which is running there, you're really up for a big and unpleasant surprise, I guess.
Now, I think one of the challenges, and if I remember, running radio stations when technical people would come and say, here's a budget for a firewall. And you look at it and you say, but I want to use that for this new morning show talent that I want to bring on board. It's just crazy. There's always this balance between how much do you spend on protection, because you assume those threats are, that won't happen to me. And something more immediate, because, so much easier for especially GMs and so on to think, money should go towards marketing or talent or content or something else like that. How do you explain to station owners that maybe 10,000 euros on a firewall is cheaper than 48 hours of dead air? I think when they hear it like that, they get it. But how do you make it real for them?
Yeah, that's true. That's actually a good point, because that is not exclusive to radio owners. The problem with security is it always costs money. It does not generate revenue, so you have no direct return on invest for every security control that you implement. But on the other hand, as you already mentioned, it protects the revenue that you're generating with whatever you're doing in the operations, so with your broadcasting in this case. And a good way we found to really bring that across to the owners, to the responsible persons, let's say the CEO, for example, is to sit down with them and talk to them and really ask, okay, what are your core assets, right? What are the services that need to be running for your operations to really live up to what you expect them? And then they come up with a long list. So I don't know, my internet uplink needs to work, my studio needs to work, and whatever systems they're running inside. And then you say, okay, let's talk about your internet uplink. What happens if the internet uplink goes down for any reason? So there's like 5 hours, no connectivity at all. What does that mean for your operations? And we're not only looking at what does it cost you, but also what does it mean for your employees, for the ease of work that they are doing? So is this maybe also some kind of comfort loss that they have? Do they need to take additional steps to somehow make it work? But also, coming back to the voice hacking that we had before, let's assume there's a major crisis, a hurricane, something like that, and people are really relying on your broadcasting station. And then there's somebody's in your station and broadcasting false information. So they say, stay at home instead of evacuate, something like that. So this could really affect the health and safety of your listeners. And I mean, this is at the last point where the interviewer on the other side would say, okay, that is bad, and we really need to avoid that. So you really need to go through step by step through all the systems and say, what are the consequences of this component failing? And then, they mostly get it.
Well, maybe, Sebastian, what you've just said there right at the end is probably the most powerful way. Tell them a story of what could happen if you don't do this. And maybe sometimes, I think maybe engineers are not good storytellers, because they have a different brain. It's a lot of left brain. And sometimes they're going to have to use a little bit of right brain to say, imagine this scenario if you don't do that. And in the way that you just described it with the hurricane story, and suddenly it becomes very real for people. I think that's a great example. Now, one of the challenges every radio station, wherever they are in the world, are facing is increasing top line pressure, which obviously means you're protecting your bottom line, which means you're cutting costs. Now, if a station has no money to spend, what is the one thing they can do today to make themselves safer?
Yeah, the one thing I would really suggest, and you see, I've been a Boy Scout and Scout leader for the last 30 years. So one of my mottos is be prepared. And I would say this is really the core that it comes down to. So I would suggest sit down, look at your operations, and make a plan. Look at all the components, look at the neuralgic points within your infrastructure, right? And coming back to the thing we just discussed, what will hurt you the most if something goes wrong? And then make a plan for that. How can you mitigate that failure? So let's say there's, for example, a fire in your building, and that would obviously interrupt your broadcast. So maybe identify a backup site. From where can we broadcast if our building gets destroyed? Is there something where we could go over? Do I have a contract with some other station maybe, and they could assist us? Or is it feasible to enable my employees to broadcast from home, from a home studio for a certain amount of times? So really sit down, have a business continuity or build a business continuity plan right from the bottom up, because once it happens, it's too late. You don't have time to think then, and you won't think clearly once the catastrophe hits. So you need to be prepared right from the start, and that, I would say, is a brilliant way to go into security here.
Thank you for that, Sebastian. So one of the things we tried to do for this session, because we're aware of a major breach that happened with a very large network in the US. We're also aware of breaches that have happened with some European radio stations. The problem, of course, is those CTOs don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about what happened. They don't want to tell us how they fixed it, because maybe there's some embarrassment. There's obviously concern. It doesn't look good, sound good. So we couldn't get those people on for those of you that are watching. But what we may have from one or Sebastian or Michael, you might have a story to share about the worst cyber attack you're aware of. Maybe you can tell us what caused it. You may not know. How much it cost the company. You may not know. How much they should have invested to prevent it. You may not know. But anyway, if the two of you have got, and either of you has got a story, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I could start talking maybe about two incidents. One of I heard of, and the second one which really happened to one of our customers. And sometimes it's really frightening to see how things happen. So we've got one customer who's doing audio things, and for whatever reason, I think the main fault happened when someone opened up an email, and he or she or whoever opened up the email didn't do this because they wanted to, but they were just, this fraud email was looking so good, so unique, that they just opened it and things happened. And the outcome of this thing is that and now we are 3 years after this incident happened, they're still not back again in normal operations and are running in a kind of emergency mode. And unfortunately, I can't give more insights, but I can give you some insights from a big media company here in Germany. They're called Funke Media Group. They are also having some smaller commercial radio stations, but their main income is done through publications. So they do daily newspapers, they do magazines and whatever. And on the 22nd of December in 2020, they also had a big cybersecurity incident. We don't know really what happened. I would think that maybe, again, some kind of opening something from an email could have been involved there. The end outcome of this was that they were not able to operate in normal service for more than 5 weeks. They had to skip some daily newspapers. They weren't able to produce it. They weren't able to print it. So I think the loss they made was really, really high. And I think this shows very much the urgency of cybersecurity. I think from my point of view, when I wear my business hat, it's not the question if something could happen to me. The question is, when does it happen to me, and am I prepared somehow? Because it's the people on the other side, the cyber attackers, they are getting more and more in a state where what they do looks so good on the first glance. And we all know, whoever worked in a radio station, whoever did a daily shift, prepared a news show, whatever, you are very often in a hurry. You don't have time for being very precise and read through things 3 times or whatever. And if then things happen, like your CEO calls you and tells you something, maybe you think, oh, he's in a strange mood today, but well, that can happen as well. So it's really hard. And I think the persons and the people are really on the focus side of the attackers. Of course, there are also hacks which are very technical and are just focusing on machines and on stuff. But I think focusing on the persons, especially on persons who are doing things. And I think the Funke example, where they weren't able to produce all of their magazines, all of their newspapers for 5 weeks, I would compare it to radio. It's like a radio station not able to broadcast for 2 days, 3 days, whatever. Just imagine the loss or the fees you have to pay because you can't send out your commercials. So that's really a big issue.
Crazy. Michael, you are aware, and I think we spoke about this when we were thinking about this session. You said to me, that these hacker farms or whatever they are, they're a professional business. They have
Yes.
specific skills allocated to something, and other skills, and accountants waiting for the money that's being demanded in the ransom. Can you just take us through that? Because I found that pretty extraordinary.
Well, I think it's from the business perspective. This is, although we all know it's bad and it's a crime, but it's like a big business. You know, in some countries, there are whole call centers with persons calling private persons or whatever, doing fake calls, pretending they are from Microsoft or from whatever, trying to get access to your home PC and then trying to get money out of you. And it's really it's a big business. I'm not sure how much money is involved. I'm pretty sure there is a lot of money involved, and I think it's like a marathon run, and we all need to run, and they are running behind us, and we need to stay in a safe distance between it. And when we look at it from a technical point of view, if I jump into the head of a CTO of a radio station, whatever, we see a massive change happening over the last 15 years. So 15 years ago, we all used CD players, analog mixing desks. Maybe we had still vinyl LPs playing or tapes or whatever. So the amount of PC and network aggregated stuff was very low. Today, we're all talking about cloud. We're talking about mixing desks as a service in the cloud, which is great. We're also talking about removing in our broadcast center to make the cost of our studios and the cost of our rooms lower. We're talking about SMPTE 2110. So we are removing dedicated cables which were used for audio and for video by standardized network cables. Standardized network cables are a great thing again, but they use standardized network switches. They talk to standardized other network devices. And this is a very, very big point where people could get in and could do strange things and worse things. And what we need is we need an awareness that we shift more and more to a network enabled environment, that also in our radio station, in our operation, we do need people with this specific kind of knowledge. So we're shifting a little bit from the engineer who's able to fix the CD player to a specialist who, if something happens, can look into the network. And this is really a shift of the whole broadcast infrastructure. And the more we do, and the more we make use of the cloud, the more we make use of broadcasting from home using audio over IP, SMPTE 2110. And this is true for radio and for television as well. The more possibilities we have that an attacker could get in there.
We got some questions coming through. Thank you for that. That was a very, very strong, powerful example that you gave us. And of course, insights on how those vulnerabilities are increasing. Gareth Cherry, will come to your question soon, but this one's from Bala in Malaysia. What are the most common cyber threats targeting IP-based radio studios these days? And how does your solution differ from standard tools like firewalls in preventing actual outages? Any one of you, just go for it.
Well, I could start with the first half of the question from Bala. I think the most common cyber threats that are targeting IP studios are the cyber threats that are targeting, well, the whole organization, because the IP studio is, from a technical point of view, just another piece of kit which we have. And the thing which can come and can scramble my file server with all my account information, of course, depending on what kind of IP infrastructure I run, could in theory go and scramble my mixing desk, making it unavailable for me. So we're talking about, well, computers. So I think the most common threat is a common threat, which is not necessarily different, targeting radio, targeting banking, targeting other industry sectors. It's this typical things we know. Our solutions, when I take a look at the DIRA solutions, for example, we have for radio production and playout. Well, they are comparable to standard tools. There are also, of course, in a setup, we also talk with our customers and we give our suggestions to put in firewalls, whatever. It is at the moment, as I said before, talking about cybersecurity. It's not like buy this software for once and it's good, because everything is changing all the time, and you can always only try to avoid getting targeted. And if you get targeted, you should have a plan. So I think really having a solution which prevents an outage and saying, I've got the solution and this solution prevents the outage. And I'm sure by 100%, if I would say this, that would be a lie. I think there is no way. And I think Sebastian can talk about this, that there will never be, I think, one solution which gives you a 100% certainty to be sure. And this makes this whole topic so, I would say, from a technical point of view, interesting, because you always have to stay vigilant and you always have to be, well, in this marathon run, you always need to look what's currently happening, what are my plans, what am I doing? And if I'm asked, I just had a meeting with a station supervisor some weeks ago, and he said, what would you suggest? Because we were talking about fancy backup systems, which we build somewhere, which we switch off, and we switch them only on in case of something happens. And a valid outage prevention mechanism could be having a bunch of CDs in my studio and keeping 1 or 2 CDs players. Although it might sound very old-fashioned, but it could be a prevention which could help depending on the size of your station, depending on your operations, whatever. It could be not a bad idea to maybe have a USB stick with all my advertisements for the day, with the files on it, so I can play it from any device if needed. But this is always, I think there is no one size fits all. It always depends on how large is your organization, how many stations are you running, what are the most important things for you? Talking to commercial radio stations, of course, the commercials and the traffic system is top notch. It's very important. When I talk to a public broadcaster, this importance shifts a bit, because the public broadcasters, they are not so keen on commercials, but they want to stay on air. They need to inform the public. Very often they have they are legally obliged to serve to the public, so they have to make their plans if something goes wrong. And this makes it really interesting. And unfortunately, my answer is there is no one size fits all.
Sure. Do you have anything to add to that, Sebastian?
Not really. I think this is summed perfectly up what I said before. Be prepared, make plans. Yeah, that's important.
We have a question from Gareth Cherry. Have you seen any confirmed or suspected attacks specifically targeting your AOIP environment, meaning the audio path or its control plane, not just general IT incidents? If yes, what was the attack surface, endpoints, switch fabric, discovery protocols, routing control, or management interfaces? I'm assuming Gareth, of course, is not an on-air talent or a marketing guy, just based on all of the stuff he's brought up there. He's clearly super technical.
Yeah. And I'm happy to say that I luckily haven't heard about any big outages or attacks which I'm aware of. But I also need to say, whenever we're talking about that cyber attacks, it's always a thing of, there are people who are handling this very openly if something happens, but there are also people who are trying to keep it under the surface. So I'm not sure if it happens. I'm not aware of anything of this, but I think this is one thing. For example, when we are in this technical area, for example, I think a few years ago when we talked about technical IP-based protocols to control devices. A lot of people were talking about Amber and Amber Plus. And Amber Plus are protocols where one device can talk to a different device and then they do something. And one thing which was really interesting when those protocols came up, they were working, they were fine, they were absolutely great. But for whatever reason, they didn't have implemented security at the beginning, meaning that some of those protocols are very open. And if you know the right things to send or the right things to receive, the machines will simply do whatever you do because they're not controlling is the command which is currently coming authorized or not. And this is something with all of the definitions of SMPTE 2110 and the AES regulations, which are there now for protocols and for interconnectivity of machines. This is getting better because also the vendors and everyone who's building machines and endpoints and virtual or hardware mixing desks, they know that security is important and they're putting it in. But up until now, I haven't heard about big outages because some mixing desks or visual mixes or whatever were attacked. I heard of mixing desks not working because someone did an update whilst the show was running, but that's a different story.
Yeah. So I've not heard of any either. However, I would like to give an advice to Gareth. So if you look at the question, what is the attack surface? There's this technique which is called attack path modeling, right? And this is maybe a way you could try to answer your question yourself. So if you have some free time, sit down, look at your AOIP environment, and then see, okay, what are the possible attack vectors that I have here? From where could I get to this environment? And then slowly draw the path out. So is it connected to my office IT? Then maybe I need to adjust my firewall or something like that. Or I need to implement something like a network-based intrusion detection. And this is a really helpful tool that we use very often to see, okay, where's the real threat coming from and where do I need to put the controls?
Gareth's actually got a follow-up as well on a different matter. Firewall, endpoint protection, anti-spam, phishing simulations, and VPN access. Is it still a risk to keep everything on one flat network? I assume the answer is yes. Should we be splitting the environment into dedicated VLANs, business IT, broadcast playout, AOIP audio, AOIP control and management to reduce blast radius if something gets compromised?
Yeah, absolutely. I would still very much advise against having one flat network because, I mean, it sounds great what you have in place already, but imagine there's a new malware going around the network and it's using so-called zero-day exploits. So there's no patch yet or no endpoint protection that can identify this malware. Then still, if anyone in your IT network gets targeted or just, as Michael said, opens an email and then all the fun starts, then this might still affect all your broadcasting equipment, and you really want to avoid that. So yes, from my perspective, definitely split that into VLANs and then feel a lot safer than now.
Brilliant. I'm sure that helps, Gareth. Now we had set this up before, but I'm not sure that whether you guys have kind of answered this anyway. I had this sort of real life challenge. Station's traffic system is locked. Morning show starts in 12 minutes. What do you do? Have you guys already answered this? Can I move on, or do you want to have a go at this? So you got 12 minutes of that. So you're fighting against time. Traffic system's locked. Morning show starts. Quick answer. What to do?
So maybe I'll just start here, and Michael then can add to this. I would say we answered already quite a bit here. So again, it comes down to be prepared, right? So if this happens, of course, what I expect you to do is you go to your locker and you take out the business continuity plan that you prepared and you printed it out because you don't want to have it on your encrypted server because that's not really helpful. So yay for you, you did your work before, and now at least you have a diagram, a flow chart, whatever that tells you what to do, who to contact, who's responsible for which system, and so on and so forth. And so you can you don't really need to think hard, but you just follow the steps that are documented there. This is the first thing that you need to do. And then, of course, we fall back to, I would say, standard incident response procedures. So if the system is locked, encrypted, whatever, first thing for me would do isolate the system. Do not turn it off, because if you later get in a forensics team or whatever that looks at the system, turning it off might erase some footprints the attacker might have left. But just unplug the network cable or maybe the virtual network cable and let the thing do whatever it likes for itself. So it cannot affect the rest of your network, but then you can later come back to it and do some analysis and see what happens there. And now imagine you have your own IT team or whoever is working already on the case. Then now would also be, for me, the point to call in the special forces, right? So this may be your cybersecurity provider, assuming you have one. That's great. Call them, they come along. Maybe you also have a cyber insurance for that, especially. Then also call them and they send the incident response team over. So that would be the optimal way. Otherwise, if you don't have either of that, and of course, you need to do this in any case, but maybe they can also help. Call the authorities, right? Check with the local police. They might have some special teams, maybe on a trans-regional level or something they can send over. And at least in Germany, I know that you are also required to call the authorities, because if there's a cyber attack, you need to report that. So that may also help you. They might have some ideas, especially when you're talking to the organized crime, when negotiating with them. Because, I mean, normally what you always hear is don't negotiate. But I have heard from multiple clients, they were really, really down. The system was not running and they had no hope. And they started negotiating and they got their data back. They paid a lot of money, but they got their data back, right? So, and this is also something where professionals can really help. And once all of this is in place, you have somebody who is implementing the backup plan that you have, because in business continuity and so on. And then you need to think, okay, how could this have happened? And how can I restore my real backup to bring the system back up? Because now I have to do everything manually. I have to play the advertisements manually, as Michael already said earlier. And this is really, really hard and putting a load on the team.
We heard that crazy hooting behind you, I think, Sebastian. That's obviously some hackers not happy with the fact that you're giving good advice here, trying to shut you off. Let's do some quick. Do you want to add to that, Michael, before I go into myth busting?
Well, no, I think Sebastian pretty much showed everything. I think the most important thing is, if you need to start thinking about it at the point when it happens, then you're not in a good position. So you should have your plan at hand, and the plan could involve some big and bold and shiny technological solutions, what to do when this happens and when that happens. It could also involve USB sticks, WAV files which have been exported the day before, and a CD player. It all depends on your size, your available amount, or your amount of money you're willing to spend, and also what the impact is for you. Is it really a very, very urgent system which has been shut down, like your production playout system or the traffic system, or is maybe just the computer for the weather down? Well, then look out of the window and tell them how the weather is. So that would be.
You'd have to be a very, very local station in that case.
Yes.
So in fact, that segues really nicely to the first myth busting. Can you ever be too small? Or someone says, we're too small to be targeted. True or false?
False. That is the same as, we don't have interesting data. Why should anyone hack us? this is really does not count. Michael nicely explained before how organized crime work these days, and they don't care if you're big or small. They want your money, and they will press you this way or that. So no, maybe you're not a target for, let's say, a nation state actor, but you're still a valid drive-by target for any organized crime organization.
Next one, our engineer handles security. Is that best practice or not?
I would say I'd rather call it a common practice. I would not say it's the best practice. So yeah, of course, I mean, I know that I've worked for smaller companies as well, and there was an IT team of 2 people. They were doing everything, and so they did also security. And here with the engineer, it's the same. It may have worked in the past, and of course, your engineer, he probably today also brings IT skills, and he may be able to deploy endpoint protection, stuff like that. But with the ever increasing number of attacks that we see out there and the ever evolving attack techniques, I would really say it is not a best practice. And of course, if you're a small station, you cannot afford like an entire cyber team, something like that, then I would really suggest get some professional help. There are also some solutions on the market for small and medium businesses.
Third one, our cloud vendors handle everything. True or false?
Depends. So
Okay.
yes, they do a lot for you. They take a lot of loads off your shoulders, like with providing physical infrastructure, offering backup solutions, stuff like that. Maybe you remember like 5 years ago, I guess, there was a French data center that belonged to a cloud operator that burned down. And okay, it's a data center, it burns down. I have my backup solution, that's great. And afterwards, all the clients were puzzled, or a lot of clients were puzzled, because both backup sites, they were in the same data center. And so what this effectively meant was that all of those data was lost. And yeah, I think what I want to say is, yes, you can use the cloud, that's no problem at all, but be aware of your contracts, be aware of how this is configured, how this is built up. Think about stuff like data protection and data privacy. If you're located in the EU, you need to think about GDPR. I'm not allowed to put my my staff data, for example, on a foreign data center. So there are a lot of aspects that I need to take into consideration when going to the cloud, but I would not recommend against it, because on the other hand, they do what most often they know what they do.
I think, Omar, you muted yourself for whatever reason. Maybe you need to repeat what you said.
Yeah, you're right, I did. And I'm sorry about that. I think my dog was snorting in the background, so I needed to quieten her. So I said, do you have anything to add to that, Michael, or can we go on to Bala's got another question?
No,
Shall we go with that question? Okay. For broadcasters, what quantifiable metrics, example, downtime reduction percentage, do CGI services provide to justify against rising insurance premiums for cyber breaches in the radio sector?
That's a very valid and good question, but I think, as I said before, when dealing with cybersecurity and cybersecurity plans for our customers, it's really hard to give a kind of downtime reduction percentage, quantifiable information there. It's a little bit like yeah, what's written there. The premiums for cyber breach insurances are going up. Yes, that's true. I think this is more like an individual question. How much are you, as a broadcaster, as a radio station, whatever, prepared on the one hand to take as an impact, and how much are you willing to pay to protect against it? And this is I think this is really hard to give a kind of common answer on.
Let me ask
Yeah.
Let me ask a question from an ignorant person, which I am around all of these things. Is, for example, if you're running radio stations, you have a network in Malaysia or India versus the US or South Africa, are the likelihood of cyber attacks different because of the geography you occupy, because of the territory you might be in? Is there less likelihood for people to attack stations in South Africa than stations in the US or in Europe or Malaysia? Does that then make a difference in terms of how, because like you say, everything is individualized, right? You said there's no such thing as a general solution. Can that make a difference to, obviously it might make a difference to the premiums, but can it make a difference to the way CGI might service them from a downtime reduction percentage or anything like that? Might be a stupid question, but I'm putting it out there.
No, actually, it's a good question. I would say it does not differ that much, because attackers, if they don't target a specific company, then it doesn't matter where it's located, right? So they try to get in all over the world and extract the money in the way they do. So as long as the data center that you're referring to follows the same standards regarding security governance and compliance, for example, then I would say it is very comparable if it's located in the US or in South Africa, for example. And looking at data centers in India, at some point they even fulfill higher standards there, because this is a highly developed IT country. And so I would not have a bad feeling of hosting anything there, or would feel the need to implement additional cybersecurity controls here.
Thank you for that, Sebastian. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, from a business perspective, I think one could say that what Sebastian says is absolutely correct. I think, but there is a difference if you are living in a country where the freedom of speech and the freedom of press is under pressure. You're much more likely to be in focus for an attacker, and you're not a drive-by target. So just for example, if you are a free radio station in Russia, I would think the likelihood that someone sees you as a possible target might be higher than being a radio station in South Africa or Malaysia.
Okay. So we're almost coming to an end. We've got about 8 to 10 minutes. And of course, we don't have news or weather at the top of the hour. So if we go a little bit over, no problem. So if you've got questions that you want to ask, it's perfectly fine. You're welcome to do it. But just as we get to closing, between the two of you, can we create a roadmap for 2026 for a station embarking on trying to build a great defense? And could you sort of like segment it and say, do this in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4? Good time to do it. 2026, fresh start, roadmap for your station to create a great defense. Sebastian, start with you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So first of all, I would say the most important thing is get your management commitment, right? Because if management is not behind whatever you're doing in cybersecurity, that will really give you a hard time, because you need budget, you need staffing, you need to maybe implement controls that are not fun and games for everyone, because they somehow constrict or restrict the way people are working. And management commitment is absolutely essential. So this is the first step on whatever you're doing. Then the second step here is, again, coming back to what we said before, be aware of infrastructure and processes, look at your core assets, and start with the planning. Know the risks, do a real excessive risk management and risk planning. And then from there, you can really derive, what do I need to do to become secure, and how I can really make my service more resilient. So this is the first thing. And once you start planning, be assured that will take a while, and that will probably stay with you for the entire duration of your service, because some things change, you need to adapt, and so on and so forth. However, if you go into the technical aspects, then there are some low-hanging fruits which can give you a quick success when you start, right? So one of our listeners said before, endpoint protection. Yeah, this is essential. It must not be some high-end XDR solution, but if you have an antivirus on your system, that would be a great first start. The same, of course, goes for network protection. So have a firewall, do some zoning there, have some VLANs, and separate your office IT from your operating IT. Endpoint protection, this is probably the thing you can annoy your staff mostly with, because they suddenly need a second device, they need a second step when they log in, but this is so helpful. Passwords get stolen so very often, or people tend to use the same passwords for different services, which then allows an attacker to, I don't know, steal the password from a breach that has occurred somewhere and use it to log into your corporate network, and you really want to avoid that. So multi-factor authentication, this is really great. A backup system, of course, this is also a very low-hanging fruit. Put your data somewhere, maybe in the cloud, if that's the easiest way for you. And if it's possible, follow the worm principle. So write once, read many, because that has the advantage that an attacker or a malware could not corrupt your backup data, right? They cannot encrypt it, because that is what modern malware does. First, they encrypt whatever you have, and then they encrypt your backup, so you can go back, and you are then again back to paying their ransom fee. Of course, you also need to know how to use that, right? We see that very often. People have great backup infrastructure, but they've never ever tried once to restore it. And if the situation occurs and they try to do it, they see, oh, there's still a hiccup and this is not working. So practice what happens if the situation occurs. Have a reasonable password policy. That is also a good step. And then talk to your employees. They are the first line of defense, and they are also a large attack surface, right? Because they receive emails, they receive phone calls, they receive people standing in front of your front desk and telling you, oh, I need to go in there because I need to fix that and that. And then they go in and you never see them again because they somehow did something malicious and then just left. So I would say this is the foundation. This is what you start with. And from there you can build up. So hardening your systems. There are a lot of guides available online. Microsoft has something. VMware has something. Every manufacturer provides information on how to secure your system. So that is a good step. And then it gets a little bit more complicated. So change management, asset management, patch management, all those processes that are really the foundation for a good and ITIL confirm operation. This is also key for cybersecurity. I've met so many clients who are not aware of which assets they do have in their network. And then suddenly there's something going on at an IP address and you say, okay, can you tell me what system this is? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, let me just call someone to ask what server this is. And this is horrific. You really don't want that when you do cybersecurity analysis. Okay, so I guess that would be the second step. I would say maybe between Q2 and Q3, something like that, because the first, that low-hanging fruits, but it still takes a while. And then you can really go all into security. So set up a central log server, install a SIM application that can generate alerts in real time, so you get a feeling of what is going on in your network. And then you can also directly react to certain alerts and certain incidents. But this is already on a very high level. And if you really think on operating this yourself, maybe even in a 24/7 fashion, then you really need a large team to do that. So maybe just to give you a number, if you want 24/7 SIM and security operations, we are talking about 12 full-time equivalents only for the level 1 shifts. So, and then of course you need the experts and the forensic experts on top. So you're at, I don't know, 15 to 20 people to run all of this. And I guess this is not really what you as a radio broadcaster want to do, but then maybe this is a moment where you should look out for professional assistance.
Thank you for that. That sounded pretty comprehensive. We've got a question from Gareth that's just come through. Should stations look at a full cloud solution or a hybrid solution? Is any one better or more efficient than the other? Most of us are on two-factor authentication. What are thoughts on pass keys?
Mm-hmm. So I'm not really sure regarding full or hybrid cloud. Michael, maybe you have thought on that. But about passkeys, I guess passkeys, they are a great solution. It is really a neat combination of those multi-factor aspects. However, if you use passkeys, be sure to have the backups on hand, because otherwise this could get ugly.
Yeah. And I think regarding full or hybrid cloud setup, it depends a bit on your needs. Hybrid cloud gives you the possibility to host some of the things by yourself somewhere. So you have a diverged infrastructure. Something is in the cloud, something is on-prem. So you've got two places. That's fine. I think there is no way to saying, is it better? Better is a hard word. It also depends what you're doing. It again depends on what you want to spend, because there is one, I think, misconception about the cloud. Some people, whenever they hear the word cloud, they think of cheap. And if you put everything in the cloud, depending on what you do, a hybrid setup can be much more money efficient than putting everything into the cloud. So it depends on from which angle you look into this problem. So both works. A hybrid cloud gives you a geographic separation. You can also have a geographic separation in the cloud. When you have the right contracts, you can have multiple data centers available. So I think from in terms of efficiency, both work fine. And there might even be situations where you step away from a cloud point of view and have everything in your control, in your environment, somewhere in apparatus rooms in the basement. That can also be financially and technologically viable. So it all depends on what you want to achieve and how you work.
Thank you for that, Michael. So we're almost out of time. Running stress tests. This is obviously important. I think you might have mentioned it, to try and expose the vulnerabilities, fix them. Who should do it and how often should it be done?
I would say that.
Wait. Sorry. Before we answer that, there's a follow-up from Gareth. So I don't want to go into this. He says, what about from an attack point of view? I mean, let's go back to what you were saying, Michael, about maybe having everything on-prem sometimes. So if you take an attack point of view, what is a better solution then? Full cloud, hybrid?
I think this again depends a bit on what the attack routes are, how you get into the environment, how the environment is set up. I will relate it and pass it over to Sebastian, because I think I can't.
I mean, what you said is basically correct. So the thing is, you need to secure both environments, right? So even if you use a cloud environment, you still need to do all the security configuration and set it up in a secure way, because only because you're on the cloud does not automatically mean you're secure, right? So that's the requirement for both aspects. And if you say, okay, I go hybrid, then you need to do it for both environments. And that means you also need the know-how for both environments. If you already have someone who has been dealing with your on-prem infrastructure for the last years and he's already used to it, fine. Then, of course, he can also get into cloud security, and this is a valid solution. If you're not really that experienced in that field and you just design a solution that is based on the cloud, then it may be a little bit difficult to then say, okay, we want to go hybrid, because then you need to take care of both. On the other hand, it really depends a little bit on your situation, right? So what happens if your network connectivity goes down? This is something that I face regularly with these conferences all around the globe, because in some countries the internet is better than in the others, and so you really need to take that into consideration. Yeah, what happens if this breaks down? Then maybe some of your on-prem services are no longer available, something like that.
Okay, I'm really impressed that Gareth asked stuff that got you guys to think really deeply about it, which is wonderful, which is fantastic. Thank you, Gareth. You've actually added considerably, as have you, Bala, and others, to the quality of the conversation today around cybersecurity. So let's get to the end, that stress test question to try and expose the vulnerabilities. Who should do it and how often?
So I suggest you use a combined approach. On the one hand, you can use some vulnerability scanning. This is something which is done locally from your network tool you deploy, and that scans all your systems regularly and looks for known vulnerabilities. So open ports, misconfigurations, stuff like that. This can also be hosted on the cloud. This is also possible. So this is rather easy, and this can run on regular schedule every week, but also every day. So you get the updates automatically, and you get a feeling on what is going on in your network. Then on top, you should do what we call penetration tests. So you should have an expert externally checking your network. So I have some people in my team, but you could also go to any other expert on the market. There are a lot of them, and they try to breach your perimeter security. So they start externally, look at your website, for example, look at all your endpoints, look at your cloud presence and stuff like that. And then they try to infiltrate that, to break whatever you're running and to steal some credentials, stuff like that. And then they can exactly show you how they did it. And they also have great recommendations on how to fix this afterwards. This is, of course, way more in-depth than the vulnerability scanning, because those people, they can really think out of the box. They can try other approaches, while the standard vulnerability scanning always uses the same technique, right? The same scanning technique. So this is a great solution, and this also helps very much. And then they can also try that from in your network. So what if one of your staff members try to hack you in some way? This is also a valid risk, and you can try different scenarios. And then finally, there's what we call red teaming. This is combining penetration testing with more unusual approaches like social engineering, like phishing, like physical security. So looking for open windows in your building, for example, trying to get in, trying to access the network directly. Or one of my favorite examples is where a client told us they had a red team engaged to try to break in, and then a pizza guy showed up, delivered a pizza, and asked if he could use the toilet. And they showed them the way to the toilet. And 20 minutes later, they wondered why he was still in there. Went in there, found all his clothes on the ground, and he just switched into his suit and was wandering around the building and trying stuff. So there are so many approaches here, and this can also add more value to your security feeling.
Fascinating story. Thank you for that. How often? Once a year enough for this sort of thing?
Yes, once a year is fine. If you can afford it, twice a year is also great, but once a year should be.
Okay, fantastic. We're going to round up now, and this is a very serious topic, so I thought we should end with maybe a little bit of a lighter note. You guys, in your experience working with radio networks and media companies around the world, what have you seen? Something that you saw that you thought, wow, that's ridiculous, really funny. It's really exposes the business, and yet people were doing it. Michael, what about you?
Oh, well, I think it's already a few years ago, but I wandered into a very big newsroom of a very big, well-known organization. And I was able to log in at almost any desktop, because on every monitor there were stickers with usernames and passwords for the on-duty people doing the news. I'm pretty sure this is not any longer the case, but that was really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, now the username and password's on the cell phone, so you just need the code to get in there, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Have you got a funny story, Sebastian, or not?
Yeah, maybe just to add up to what Michael just said. A few years ago, there was a news report. I guess it was somewhere in France, and the guy was standing in front of a whiteboard and was explaining something. And behind him on the whiteboard, there was also the password written in big, nice letters, so everybody could read the password. That was very great. And maybe as a last and final advice. Male genitalia do not constitute a good password. It's too short.
Yeah, supposedly, it always ends up in the top 5 or 10 being used by people.
Absolutely.
We wanted to end on a funny note, but Gareth couldn't resist. He asked if pen testing. Should we do pen testing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Simple
I do it once a year. That's sufficient. But do it with someone who you think is trustworthy and who gives you a good feeling about this.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. You want to say something about that, Michael, or are you happy?
No, I just wanted to say one thing to take away from our session today for everyone who's watching is really be prepared, because we talked a lot about the bad cyber guys who are wanting to get us all out of the business. We shouldn't be forgetting about, for example, CrowdStrike, which is an installable software used on many PCs, which is there to protect you, which was so protective that 2 years ago, due to a fault, it was not a security, it was not a security threat, but it was a security incident. And I think there were hundreds of thousands PCs all around the world which ceased working. So it's not always the bad guys doing harm to you. It can also be by mistake, and you should have a plan at hand how to go further when such things happen.
Of course. Brilliant. Thank you so much to everybody for watching wherever you are in the world. Hopefully you learned a lot out of this session, got some really good tips and ideas from our experts, Michael Thielen and Sebastian Jansen from CGI. Thank you to CGI for making this possible. I think you've helped a lot of people, and I'm sure many more will be watching this on demand as well. From RedTech Radio Week, remember, we've still got Thursday, Friday, so day 4 tomorrow, Caption Cast, which gives you some ideas of using AI. But in fact, both tomorrow and Friday is using AI software to either create revenue or new opportunities or improve workflows. Make sure that you register for those if you haven't, and tune in for those 2 webinars coming up. And then UNESCO, as you know, is doing World Radio Day, and that's also AI themed. So make sure you register for UNESCO's World Radio Day activities. It would be good for you to just look for that. It's on LinkedIn. And so is this. If you've missed anything with this particular webinar that we did today, feel free to rewatch it, because we posted on LinkedIn, redtech.pro. And please subscribe to redtech.pro so that you always know when we're doing exciting, interesting, fascinating, insightful things like this. Lovely to have all of you here.
Hello.
And have a wonderful afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much, CGI. Goodbye.
I will take over this webcast and play German.
Radio Week 2026.
Smart ideas for radio and audio operators.